I feel like I've recently confused myself a little bit by sort of complicating things, and I keep asking on Twitter for people to explain it to me. The problem is people have different opinions, and they all seem very confident that their opinion is the obvious and simple solution. Fundamentally, it does seem to be a supply issue, so we just need more houses, and that would be great. I don't fully understand. I was reading an article today about why Kiwi Build failed so catastrophically, and I still don't fully understand why that did so badly. I guess there are multiple reasons, many factors, that it was a disaster. But basically, we just need more houses, right? And that would be ideal. But I mean, how do we do that?
I think that's the answer. Well, that's obviously how you do is you build them. I think that's the answer because
why couldn't we last time? Why didn't Kiwi Build work?
I haven't looked that deeply into it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Because I'm a fuckwit who owns a house, so I'm fine, bro. Don't worry about me.
You don't have to worry about it. You want the prices to go up. That's great.
But I would think straight away the truth is if a government says we're going to build 100,000 houses, the question is how. Like, how many builders does that require? How many builders have you secured? How many building companies have you got come on board? Because remember, they're all busy at the moment. They've already got 3 houses booked up for the next 1.5 years that they're already building. You know how hard it is. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But most people know how hard it is to get a builder to come around and check on your house. So not only do we need more houses, but we need more builders. And then you come down to these ideas of where do we get those builders from? And at the moment, I guess under COVID, you can't import them. But if you do import them, do they have to be retrained to our standards, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? But I'll give you something that I always think is a little bit naive from lots of people. People just throwing out their house prices have to go down. This is ridiculous. We can't do that. I've always said, and I used to say this as a talkback host as well. So for the last 12 months, people have been buying houses. If you want to rip 30% out of the market and they've got 5% equity in their house, you're bankrupting them all. That's something that has to be a part of this equation as well. If all these house prices drop straight away, then there's a bunch of people who are actually going to be bankrupted by that because they don't have 20% or 30% equity in their house. Now, I'm not saying that to kind of go, so fucking deal with it and we'll just keep house prices going up.
They should always go up forevermore.
I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that's a part of the conversation as well, and no one ever addresses that.
Yeah, I mean, I think also people don't want to talk about the fact that a lot of people don't want house prices to go down, and that's a huge factor, is that actually any solution is not in the interest of a very hefty voting bloc who always turns out at the ballot and loves to have their opinions heard at, local government meetings. And they absolutely don't want house prices to go down. And so any solution is ruled out by those people, or there's some sort of justification for why, actually, I think the zoning rules shouldn't change in this area because, heritage or, some obscure value. And you're like, well, people need places to live, actually. There's actually quite a lot of people homeless, and there's quite a lot of people who are aware that they'll have to rent for the rest of their lives, and they're giving away, 60, 70% of their income to a landlord so that they can buy another property. And that's not a great system, and we do need to fix it.
So a couple of things on that, right? There's a couple of things that I would think straight away. And obviously this is coming from a privileged position, right? Because I own a property. But just one, so I'm not a wanker. So
just one that you live in, and you live in that property,
and it's in Dunedin, and I'm in it right now. I'm working in it and living in it. So
Okay. Yeah, I mean that is the point of houses. So I think you're actually doing what we all should be doing.
I actually wonder if there's a whole cultural change needs to come. Now, I've had this conversation with people who are from Europe, and people in Spain that I've spoken to about this go, we don't have an expectation of ever buying a house. The expectation in our culture is we'll rent our whole lives. That could be a mind shift that would change how people felt about housing in New Zealand. And maybe the government getting involved in fixing up the rental market with that cultural shift might be a way of doing it. I don't know. The other thing...
I think also like... I
was just going to say the other thing I think is apartments. And I think Auckland is probably getting there, but we're such a culture of, a white picket fence and quarter acre block and a dog and 2.4 kids. But I think that's a solution. It's a lot quicker to build, 300 apartments than it is to build 300 houses. But the problem is they have to be decent apartments. Like I've seen what sells in Auckland for 34 square meters. I wouldn't live in it. But if it was 60 or 70 or 80 square meters, my first house was, 75 square meter, 3-bedroom house in West Auckland. If it was an apartment that was 60 or 70 square meters and 3 bedrooms and it was, 500 grand rather than 1.1 million, there's other ways.
And like most renters are also all crammed into like one little house with 10 other people anyway. So it's like the idea that because we're building houses that are big, that people are living in these expansive, lovely environments is just ludicrous. Like an apartment, if you could have an apartment was affordable and you could live in one by yourself, then that would be so much more space for each person. But I definitely think, I don't know, if we do manage to build a shit ton of houses and prices start to come down and we start to realize that, we should make other investments because it's kind of weird that that's the one investment we encourage everybody to make, and therefore nothing bad can ever happen to the housing market, even as we let the rest of our economy crumble. Even if that happens, people of my generation, there's a decent chance that those benefits won't kick in for a while, and we still will be renting for the rest of our lives. So I absolutely think a huge part of this conversation should be, hey, a lot of people are going to rent forever. Let's make that a nice experience. Let's give them a sense of ownership over their property. Because I think the horrible thing is the transience, right? It's that feeling of, well, it's not really your house. You're here for a year and then you might get kicked out at the end of that year, or you're not allowed to paint anything or alter anything. Like you're talking about those people like in Germany, you're renting for your whole life, but it feels like your house.
Totally. 100%.
And that's the big difference, right? Is a feeling of ownership. And this is my community. And, I can raise my kids in that school and I'm not worried I'm going to have to pull them out of school because we have to move because the landlord said.